Good evening, Marie and Sunri. Could you just tell me that you can see the shared screen on the screen at the moment?
Hi, Stefan.
Hello.
Yes, I can see it.
Thank you. Just waiting for Alexander to get his sound. Joining from a different device. Okay. Okay. I think we'll give it 5 more minutes before we get started. We're just making sure that Alexander is good to go. I want to thank you to all the guests that have joined us so far. I would just like to ask that you be patient and we will start the presentation shortly. There we go. I see a microphone there. I think you had it. Okay, so I think what we can do is that we can get started with the introductions and then we'll go from there. So I'd like to welcome all the guests to our Spring Sessions 2023. This is our Spring Sessions for the 11th of October, and it's going to feature the topic of African fashion, manufacturing, and resources. I want to wish you all very welcome. So the South African fashion manufacturing sector is a dynamic and evolving industry that plays a pivotal role in the country's economy and always has, in fact. Known for its unique blend of traditional African craftsmanship and contemporary design, this sector is a vibrant tapestry of creativity and innovation. With that said, we know that the sector faces many obstacles that often pose weaker challenges to local producers and creators. So what we hope to do in this session is just to provide an overview of the present state of African resources and manufacturing, how we can envision a future for African manufacturing and resources, main factors affecting economic growth in South Africa, and the main challenges for manufacturers in South Africa. Okay, so if I just share my screen, sorry about that. I'm just having technical difficulties of my own. Okay, so tonight we have Alexander from Amnova. Alexander from Amnova is a young production technology startup based in South Africa, servicing clients from across the globe. They are at the forefront of developing sustainable additive manufacturing and industrial-grade hybrid 3D printing systems. Amnova is passionate about empowering South Africa as a global leader in sustainable manufacturing and advanced technology development. Sorry, I'm just seeing, I'm sharing the wrong screen here, my bad. Okay, then we have Hazel Pillay. Hazel Pillay is from the Pick n Pay clothing retail store. She is the general manager. So she is responsible for managing stakeholders for the Pick n Pay clothing retail store and chain and franchise. And she's responsible for managing the overall operations of that business. Okay, and then we have our moderators for the evening. It's Marie Sutherland and Sanri van Rensen. Marie, can I just ask you to quickly introduce yourself and then after that, Sanri?
Perfect. Good evening, industry staff and students. I am Marie Sutherland. I'm program coordinator for the BCom and BA buying degrees at Stadio School of Fashion. I also lecture trend analysis and project management.
Thanks, Marie. Good evening, industry reps and all the attendees, and thank you, Stefan. So I'm Sanri van Rensen, and I'm the lecturer for supply chain management and strategic business management at Stadio School of Fashion. I'm also the PC, so program coordinator for honors in fashion. I completed my degrees in BCom supply chain management, my honors and masters in supply chain management. And I'm currently studying towards a PhD, focusing on digitalization in supply chain management as well.
Thank you so much, Marie and Sanri, and a warm welcome to our guest speakers, and then also a warm welcome to all our guests in the chat. So what the proceedings going forward is that we're going to give the floor to Marie and Sanri just to talk us through a bit of an introduction for the local manufacturing and resource industries and just set the scene for what it is that we're actually talking about tonight. This should provide a very healthy discussion about the robust challenges and opportunities that are available for South African fashion producers. With that being said, I'll hand over to our moderators.
Thank you, Stefan. So to set the scene for tonight's exhilarating discussion, we firstly look at the present state of Africa in terms of fashion manufacturing and resources. Therefore, looking at two topics, the current state of the clothing, textile, footwear and leather sector, as well as natural and organic manufacturing. So the clothing, textile and footwear sector play a significant role in South Africa manufacturing, providing employment to 14% of this workforce. It is also noteworthy that this sector ranks as 11th largest when it comes to manufactured good exports in South Africa. However, one of the major challenges faced by the CTFL is the competition from international competitors, which poses a constant threat to its growth and stability. On a broader scale, the apparel market in 2023 is valued at a substantial $5.79 billion, reflecting the industry's significant economic importance. Moving to our second topic, there's a growing demand for naturally manufactured and organic clothing, as reported by Current Textile Journal in 2022. In South Africa, several leading clothing manufacturing brands have made their mark, including Me&B, Selfie, Rich Manisi, Tula Cindy, David Talale, Futsamoyo, Isabel de Villiers, Tepo, Sama and Viviers. Additionally, in terms of garment manufacturing, companies in South Africa, notable names include Edcon, Foschini, Reliance Clothing, and so many more, as reported by Donny in 2023. These insights reflect the vibrant and evolving landscape of the South African clothing and textile industry. Right, then I'm going to hand over to Sandri to give us the future of Africa perspective.
Thank you, Maria. I'm just checking you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thanks so much. So looking at Future Africa and the South African Clothing and Manufacturing Master Plan. So we looked at an article published by IOL in February of 2023 on the topic Local Fashion Industries Growth Confirmed by President Ramaphosa's 2023 SONA address. And this article stated that to achieve economic growth, the government needs to promote investment and develop master plans in sectors of the economy, such as the automotive, clothing and textiles, poultry, sugar, agriculture, and global business services. The clothing manufacturing industry in South Africa contributes to around 1/3 of the GDP, according to this article. This is why the government's textile, footwear and clothing cluster master plan intends in increasing the amount of locally made garments in stores from 44% to 65% by 2030. Hazel, I know you're going to talk a bit more into the master plan, so I won't go into too much detail and I'll leave it to the industry rep to go into detail, but it was very nice to see that you're also touching on this master plan because it just shows how important it is in this space and for us. So I'll leave that to Hazel a little bit later in the evening. But if this master plan succeeds, it could create 120,000 more jobs, bringing the total number of work opportunities across the entire fashion supply chain to around 330,000 vacancies or jobs. So in related to this development, our school, Stadio School of Fashion, has introduced a 3-year diploma in clothing production designed to equip students with current trends, good practices, and creative, technical, and technological knowledge. And this incentive aims to prepare graduates to contribute effectively to the transformation of South Africa's cultural and economic landscape. Then just lastly on this, TFG, amongst others, are also engaging in establishing manufacturing plants locally. Myself and Marie saw an article today published by CBN stating that a TFG factory in Caledon is producing 4.5 million garments annually, and they aim to grow to produce 6 million garments in 2026. Then just moving onto the slide we are now. So looking at this master plan, we speak about economic growth. So since achieving high economic growth in South Africa persists as one of the ultimate serious development issues, it is critical to examine factors that influence South African economic growth. So a study done also in 2023 on the topic analyzing factors that influence economic growth in South Africa. The writers identified that technological process, labor, power supply, and capital formation are all associated significantly with South African economic growth. And according to this research, in the long run, labor and technological process coefficiencies are positively correlated with economic growth, which was very interesting, whereas power supply and capital formation are negatively correlated with the economy. Thus, in the clothing manufacturing sector, we need to invest in technology and labor, and also anticipate the threats that power supply and capital formation will have, and how this affects manufacturing in South Africa. Thank you, Stefan. You can go to the next slide.
Thank you, Sandri. It's actually so exciting to see our school appearing in this localization movement and change. On that note, also to just kind of bounce back quickly to our present Africa, it's very exciting to note that our School of Fashion also collaborates with some of these localization brands such as Me&B and Tepo, which we have incorporated in some of our students' work as well. But then I'll jump back to this one, which focuses on the challenges of manufacturers in South Africa. So here we explore 4 topics through a local and global lens. So firstly, we have the issue of local costs, scarce resources that lead to high manufacturing cost, which is impacting local producers' profitability and sustainability. And I think our industry will also highlight that for us in just a second. And then moving on to the productivity of local businesses faces different challenges, such as monopoly companies that create uneven playing fields for local retailers, compounded by limited education and accessibility on local retailers in South Africa. And as a result, we've seen a rise in concept retailers, a topic which you will hear more about in our next spring session. And then global competition is another major concern. Large fast fashion retailers such as Shein saturate the market, creating intense pressure on local brands. And this competition encompasses both brick and mortar as well as click and mortar, including third-party metaverse retailers as well, most recently. And then finally, we must address the influence of cheap imports. So it's not a secret that customers often prefer fast fashion due to its affordability, despite the exceptional quality and authenticity offered by South African local brands. We'll explore this further when we hear from our industry experts later in this session. Thank you, Stefan.
Thank you so much for that brilliant introduction to the discussion that we're having. I just want to find out, Alexander, are you able to switch on your microphone at this stage?
Yes, hello.
Yes, hello. How are you?
Brilliant, brilliant. I'm well. I've come up with a bit of a custom setup where I'm presenting from my laptop and using the audio from my cell phone. But I'm
Oh,
well. Thank you
brilliant.
so much for the introduction.
Are you able to share with us a presentation, or are you just going to speak to your experiences of manufacturing at this stage?
Yes, I will be sharing.
Okay.
Okay, shall I go ahead and do that now?
Please do.
Okay.
Amy, I see you've got your hand up. Is this a question? Do you have a question directed towards anyone specifically at this stage?
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Just wanted to ask Marie, she mentioned monopoly brands. What is a monopoly brand?
Hi, Amy, great question. So a monopoly brand is our big, large retailers that are currently oversaturating the market. This could be large brands such as Shein, our international brand, that we are seeing a lot of imports coming from that overarching brand. So if we talk about monopoly brands, it's those leading brands in the industry within the retail sector.
Thank you so much for the question, Amy.
Thank you.
Okay, with no further ado, I'll hand over to Alexander to just talk us through a bit about where Amnova sits in the supply chain, and what kind of ideas they bring to manufacturing and resources, and possibly also touch on how that affect clothing and fashion.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much, Stefan. Everyone can hear me and everyone can see my screen, correct?
Correct.
Brilliant. So my name's Alexander October. I am the department head and part of the founding team of Amnova. I'll tell you more about Amnova later on. I'll hop straight into it. So Layered was born to cater to the creative market and to cater to a gap that I discovered. So we build tech, we build industrial systems locally, and I was leading the market research to find out where are the gaps in the South African and African market where we could come in and say, we make 3D printing systems, buy our systems, essentially. And when I was doing my market research, I discovered this massive gap in the education and creative space, where I found that education institutions, regardless of the size or nature, simply don't have access to the manufacturing technology and power that the students that go through those institutions are going to be using, right? So we were like, there's this massive gap with education versus industry usage. And then there's also a gap in accessibility. So, for example, there are very, very high barriers of entry into being a sculpture maker, for example. Right, there's the skill aspect, the material aspect, you need to be an apprentice, etc., etc. And we were like, how do we lower this barrier now that we've discovered this gap? And we're like, well, the answer is sitting right under us. We already have the tech. We merely need to develop the ecosystem. So to give you a clear idea of what I mean, this is a short introduction of what 3D printing is. So you have your traditional manufacturing, technologies which are subtractive. So this is a CNC machine. This is how most metal parts, a lot of jewelry, it doesn't have to be metal. The CNC machine cuts wood, it cuts plexiglass, it cuts stuff, right? So that's a subtractive manufacturing procedure, meaning it takes material away. So as you see that metal block there, it's cutting metal away to make the end-use shape. Additive manufacturing is kind of the opposite of that, where it creates the 3D model by adding material. And I'm sure a lot of you can already see where those benefits come in when it comes to sustainability. So this was a quick sketch that we had actually at one of our Stadio workshops, where you have subtractive manufacturing processes versus additive manufacturing processes, and why has additive manufacturing, if it's so amazing, not replace subtractive? And that is because of price. So additive manufacturing makes sense at low volume. So anywhere under 10,000 units of whatever you are making. Additive manufacturing makes sense because it's agile, it's fast, and it's precise, and you can do a lot of exotic things with it. But then you get subtractive manufacturing processes and other traditional, which make much more sense at volume. So your injection molding, for example, in one shot, which lasts about 3 to 5 seconds, you can make up to 10,000 parts at a time. So that's this inflection point here, where large-scale traditional subtractive manufacturing makes more sense than additive manufacturing. Right, so moving along into the context for 3D printing. 3D printing works because it removes the constraint that traditional designing processes and manufacturing technologies use. So what we do is we say, start with a sketch, draw out what you want, and I'm going to show you some examples of this now. We use an open source software. We make a virtual product design, so a 3D model of whatever it is using a software, and then we send that to the printer and the printer prints it. So this is a live example This is the foam clip. It starts out as a sketch. We take it through the design thinking process. These are renders, and this becomes relevant later on. And then this final piece is the final render. One of these, this picture here in the top right-hand corner, is the actual thing that we made. And you can scale this up all the way to even with robots. This was something we did for the SABC, where we started out with a sketch. This is what the client had in mind. This was the development process. Most of this, everything in black is 3D printed. The eyes are 3D printed. And then this is the final piece where this body is a hybrid of 3D printing and other materials. And all of this is made possible because of 3D modeling software. Right, so 3D modeling software allows you to create digital 3D models of whatever you want. So, for example, the spectacles I'm wearing right now can very easily be resin printed or 3D printed in FDM. You can 3D model bodies. You can also scan. So I would come with a little scanner and I would scan Stefan, and then at the end I would have a digital model of Stefan similar to this male body here, which I could then, for fashion application, I could then dress, or I could keep it for measurements, or I could build a 3D sculpture of him. So 3D modeling is critical and incredibly powerful. It also doesn't have to be used with 3D printing. It gets used in graphic design, animation, anything that requires a render of something in 3D, you'd use a 3D modeling software. So here are a few. I didn't include Chloe here, which is the one that I think y'all will find most interesting, but it is later on in the slide. So what are the benefits of 3D printing? Why are we a 3D printing company? And how is it relevant to fashion? So it reduces cut-offs and waste material. It's a precision technology and it's additive. So you have very little waste. It promotes upcycling of materials. So for example, we have developed a pellet extruder and shredder where we can take your normal plastic bottle, put it through the machine, it creates filament, which I can then use to 3D print. So we can recycle bottles, etc., and then we can use them to 3D print screws, we can use them to 3D print accessories. This was a prototype for one of the accessories I made for the second years. Yeah, so promoting upcycling, it reduces raw materials by nature of it being additive, and it allows for a lot of personalization and customization, which you'll see later on. And it allows for creative exploration of fabric innovation, so textiles, more of which I'll display later. So I just hope this loads. It's not loading. Okay, let me do this because I really want to show you. I really want to show you what it looks like when you are. Sorry, I see I just got kicked out there.
So while you're doing that, Alexander, can I ask you, what is the market for, you think, for 3D printed clothes and these sorts of new technologies in South Africa? Or is that too much of a big question?
Stefan, the market is still quite small, but there's a massive market opportunity. I think genuinely that South Africa can put itself, if it invested into, not 3D printing specifically, but if it invested into the supporting ecosystem for a really thriving fashion industry, that we could very quickly become at the forefront. And by that, I mean, not just your bread and butter skills in fashion and fashion design, but also in the additional skills that comes with it. You know, everyone is speaking about the 4IR, everyone is speaking about AI, but not everybody is looking at today, what are the actionable steps I can take to put myself in a favorable position when it's already happening, but when it's immediately impacting me. And one of those things is upskilling of digital skills. So can fashion designers 3D model, right? Once you are in that space, you can then use AI and you won't be replaced by AI because you are in a position to use it in ways that A, it can't use itself, and B, people who don't use it simply won't be able to achieve the kinds of things that you want to achieve. And then also access to technologies. The fashion industry is the second oldest, if I'm not mistaken. It's the second oldest, and it's one of, if not the largest contributor to microplastics and plastic waste. When we speak about access to technologies, how can we build and design and make things without using the traditional ones, or without using the traditional ones as they are now, without completely disrupting supply chains and not really knowing what it is that you are doing. So having access to that technology is very important. The technology is out there already, it just isn't being leveraged by fashion designers, and the access for designers generally isn't there. So I think...
Thank you so much.
I don't know if my screen is sharing.
It is.
Okay, brilliant. So this is a 3D modeling software that was specifically created for fashion designers. So this is what I mean when I say the technology already exists, it just isn't being leveraged. So when watching this video, I want you to keep in mind that anything you can 3D model, you can 3D print, right? Once you figure out the complexity of material, once you figure out the complexity in design, everything that you're seeing happening on the slide right now could be 3D printed, or it could use a hybrid of 3D printing and traditional manufacturing technologies. In this way also, and this was a realization I stumbled upon a few months ago, where I was like, you asked, what does the future of fashion look like when it comes to tech? My prediction is it looks like fashion designers using 3D softwares like this, scanning their clients so that their clients don't need to come in for fittings, their clients don't need to go to a specific location. You have a 3D model of your client. If it's a wedding dress and they eat a bit more than they believe they should have, you simply go in and change the measurements in the 3D model, right? So that changes what the supply chain looks like already. When you incorporate 3D printing in, you can prototype these kinds of things very, very quickly, right? So you can get from your idea in your head to having a physical copy at much lower cost in a very short cycle. And that's what I think the future of fashion looks like. I think it looks like going into virtual environments, in a virtual room where you are trying on different things, your designer is changing different measurements, and then you step out and it gets made in the real world because you don't need to go into a specific location. I see a question from Amy.
Hello, Alexander. I'm so excited that you brought up Chloe, because I've been very interested in it. But I wanted to ask you, is Chloe an additive manufacturing way?
So Chloe is a 3D modeling software. What you have at the end of your 3D model, it gets saved in specific formats in the same way your Word doc gets saved .doc and your PowerPoint gets saved PTTX. 3D models get saved as OBJ files or STL files or whatever specific kind of file it is. They work the same. And you can then import that into a 3D, either straight into a 3D modeling software, a slicer, if that works. But most likely you'll then take it over to another 3D modeling software that's geared towards making solid 3D models, making sure that it's 3D printable. So Chloe currently is very, very early stage. What we are hoping to do is something similar to Chloe and bridging the gap between creating the digital models, like for fashion application, and bridging it to actually being able to 3D print. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
Okay, I have another question.
Hi, hello. I just wanted to ask if for the fashion industry, is filament or resin printing, like, which way would it go?
So that's a great segue into this video. So this is a company called Stratasys. They are at the forefront of fashion 3D printing. They are an amazing company, but they aren't at the forefront because they are the best at the forefront, because they're pretty much the only people playing in the space like this. So all of this on this fabric is 3D printed. This is one of the laser jet systems. We hope to bring one to South Africa sometime next year. We hope to raise funds for that so that we could become a 3D printing service provider who can do this. So Stadio would come and say, hey, we now use 3D modeling software already, but we need, because one of these printers go for easily into the millions, well into the millions. So it doesn't make sense for a designer or Stadio to buy one. So we then buy one, and we have the expertise in-house to make these and make this, because we're really good at building tech and making things, but we aren't good designers, right? So that was an example of textiles. Stratus has collaborated with an artist. This year is some textile fabrics that can, so these come straight off the printer like this. Let me do this. Delete. So these come straight off the printer like this. So this is what we mean when we speak about creating different kinds of textiles. This then goes up another layer where you can take these textiles and do things to them, which these kinds of printers can do. I'll show you a bit more later. And these are just different designs using different geometric shapes that fit together to make the actual textile. And then this is an example of 3D printed shoes. I'm being very conscious of time, so I'm not going to play the video. But the video is a Dior collaboration where this entire shoe is 3D printed. So either they made a 3D model of a foot that they got off the internet, or they scanned a model, created the shoe around the model's foot. So this is entirely customized, entirely 3D printed. It comes off the bed just like this, or out of the powder at least, just like this. And you can play with a whole range of exotic materials. Almost all of the costumes in Black Panther, a lot of the superhero movies are 3D printed. This is an example of some avant-garde pieces, entire pieces that were 3D printed. A model was made. And then this is with regards to jewelry. So you can 3D print in FDM and resin and a variety of exotic resins. And then you can 3D print in a lot of the metals as well. And next year, we are bringing a metal 3D printer, or a few actually, so that we can start doing metal stuffs. To answer your question, what's best for fashion 3D printing? Whatever the application is. And that's why having an understanding of the entire space is important, because you as a designer need to know that this is the function of what I want to do. So this is a bracelet. Does it make sense in resin because resin has these qualities? Does it make more sense in FDM because FDM has different qualities? So it's really just an analysis based on what the use case is. Most things will be resin printed. Also because you can do the most with exotic materials. So you can make it flexible, you can make it really, really strong. We did a project for clips that was a carbon fiber nylon composite that was essentially as strong as aluminium, but a fraction of the weight, a fraction of the size. Actually, it's quite small, it's about this size. Yeah, so what does this look like in the context of South Africa? That's where we come in. We build the systems, and then we also offer production services with our systems, but layered is what is most relevant for fashion purposes, because layered is the wing of Amnova that is going to be dealing with a fashion designer coming to us. We currently have one who we are making some accessories for their collection. So they would come to us, they'd say, this is my idea. Either they would have a 3D model already, or we would then say, okay, we'll 3D model it, and then we'll put it through the production process, and in a couple of days, they'll have their completed prototype. And we hope to scale this all the way up to being able to accommodate larger orders. So, for example, a massive issue around sustainability is fast fashion, right? There aren't a lot of options for a business person, your everyday person, to be like, I want to sell customized armbands, right? They either need to buy it in bulk, or they need to, yeah, basically the options are buy it in bulk or make it themselves, both of which are very expensive options. So we come in where we say, we'll do it for you faster and cheaper because of the nature of the technology we use, and also because we make our own technology, a lot of the costs get recouped by us, so we can charge. That's how we lower the barrier of cost as well. I think that there's a massive opportunity in the 3D printing market for South Africa, and I think we can become a global power very, very quickly, because all of the technology exists, the ecosystem connecting all of, or not the technology, all of the pieces of the ecosystem exist, the institutions, the designers, the clients that they cater for, events that they cater for, industries that they cater for, and the industry of the manufacturing industry itself. It just needs a bridge to turn it into an ecosystem that works well and works new and doesn't work old. Yeah, I don't know if there are any questions. That's the end of my slide presentation, so I'll stop sharing. I don't know if there are any questions from this. Going once. Going twice. No questions. Okay, brilliant. So in closing, if you want to take anything from what I've said, is, and I encourage you to go on TikTok, go on YouTube, go on Google, just Google fashion 3D printing, and the things that you will see will honestly truly blow your mind, and it will change the way that you look at making garments. In the future, I don't think people are going to be going to stores and then switching through 4, 5, 6 different clothing items that are the same size. I think people are going to go online and order and say, these are my measurements, this is what I want, and this is how I want it customized, because you would then have the ability to actually do that very, very quickly, faster than you going to the store. And it can be decentralized. If I have hubs in, and I think this is it's already happening in some parts of the world, you have production hubs where I'm in Mitchell's Plain, and no head offices or whatever Stratus's head offices are in Joburg. That's okay, because we just have a pod in a mall, and you go there and you collect your item very, very quickly, from a few hours to a few days. I think that the fashion industry is going to be very, very quickly disrupted in the next year to 2 years, that quickly. Now that there's a convergence between the visions and goals, which is sustainability, which is customizability, which is individuality, and the technology, and then also the logistics and machines to make all of it happen. And I think that everybody has a responsibility to themselves and to their industry to make sure that they are equipped for the change, because the change is going to happen. It's just a matter of when and how prepared you are. And B, the responsibility to industry to actually achieve the sustainable development goals that we have. And the only way to do that is to do things differently. Yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Alexander. I think you definitely bring a fresh perspective to the localization movement, and also embracing the digital age in clothing manufacturing, and at this point designing our own resources, which addresses a big challenge for South Africa. And I really appreciated your insights in the 3D modeling application and software, and you've actually really summarized everything that you have said. So I would just like to add on to what you said in terms of the ecosystem, and what you were explaining there is also known as a term called human-centered design, because you really focused on that approach of looking at all of the processes in the design thinking process for a designer, from the inspiration to the ideation to the prototyping. So I definitely think you hit a nerve there of innovation in South Africa, and I think definitely our designers are equipped and ready to take that step with your assistance, creating that accessibility and closing that gap. But due to our time, I think I'm going to hand over to Sandri for our next guest speaker. Thank you.
Yes, Hazel, I see Stefan has already shared your PowerPoint presentation, so you're welcome to start, and we look forward to hearing from you.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. And I know it's 6:45 and you probably had a really long day, so hopefully I'm not going to bore you to death. I am coming to you from the perspective of a retailer. I'm not a local manufacturing expert. I'm more of a retail expert, but I think the narrative that I'll bring is going to share another side of the story on how we experience local manufacturing. Can move to the next slide. So on my next slide, it is just speaking a little bit about myself. I am the general manager of Pick n Pay, and I oversee functions such as buying, planning, trend, design, sourcing, sustainability, people, finance, marketing, PR. So basically an end-to-end role, and I've been in retail for over 20 years. It always sounds really either intimidating or, you know, it looks like lots of years of experience, but doing the same thing over and over is not necessarily experience. What I can say is I've done many different roles from a retail perspective, and I have worked abroad, and I have also worked for international retailers. Next slide. So I was explaining to Stefan yesterday, this is an extremely broad topic, and I just wanted to give you some sort of headlines, but you could actually dig into each of the headlines in a lot more detail. So I am, as Sandri was saying, going to talk a little bit about the context of local manufacturing, specifically with regards to the 2019 master plan. That's when it was initiated. I'd like to also share a little bit about what the manufacturing system looks like currently in South Africa, and why would a retailer consider local sourcing. And some of the conversations have already begun around the challenges, whether it's a lack of technology or investment of skills, but I might be reiterating some of those points. And what's next? What's next? So that's where I'll finish off. Next slide. So Stanley's information came from 2023 and from different sources. I'm referring back to the master plan that would be dated in 2019, which launched around, I think, August 2019. So the absolute outcome and mandate of the master plan is to, by 2030, increase jobs, new net jobs, to 333,000 jobs. So that would be an increase of around about 121,000. The development of the master plan was based on an approach that set out to have a bold ambition to create new jobs, but most importantly, it brought all the stakeholders in the ecosystem together, with every single stakeholder having to commit to an intention and to measure that intention over time. The master plan, as Sandri also said, covers clothing, textiles, footwear, and leather. And it is also very critical that the leading clothing retailers participate and drive this master plan. And it's quite deliberate, because our role in leading the master plan can actually bring with it a lot of our strategic intent, whether it's sustainability, whether it's technology, and we can help some of the businesses that are not necessarily on that path to drive them to learn and research and become fully sustainable or more technologically sound. Just out of interest, the South African gross value add, so another way of saying that the size of clothing retail is around 74 billion, and that unlocks around about 70 billion rand in purchases of products. 55% is imported, which technically means it's only 45 that is actually local. And the number of jobs at that stage pre-COVID was 212, and 120 coming out of retail and 92 out of manufacturing. All right, so this is just a very basic diagram. We'll start off, I'm actually going to go from left to right, although it's numbered 4 to 1. So at the very start of it, we're talking about fibers and how do we source that. So we do have cotton growth in South Africa, but however, there's only 2 cotton mills, and there's only 6 fabric mills. So if I had to add up all of the local products sold within the country, it would not be possible to actually get it out of 2 cotton mills and 2 fabric mills. So immediately that first part of the process shows massive gap and massive opportunity. It's really expensive. It can go into the billions to invest in fabric and cotton mills, but that is a big gap at the moment. So unfortunately, based on that, there will be fabrics that do come abroad, even if it's actually manufactured locally. Having 6 fabric mills only allows for specific fabrics to be made, and then also specific amounts of fabrics to be made. So this elicits a lot of import within those 2 segments. The second part, which is number 3, design, product development and assembly. So that's actually speaking more to the actual manufacturers and the factories. So you'll find if it's 45% of products manufactured locally, mostly soft lines are actually done locally. So a higher contribution, more closer to 60%, and a lower contribution of footwear is manufactured locally. And again, a lack of vertical integration when it comes to majority of trims and fabrics, as I spoke about earlier. A lot of zips, buttons, special trims, very special fabrics, winter type fabrics are actually still imported because we are not able to manufacture it in this country yet. And then from there, you go into the finished goods segment, and from the finished goods segment, it now goes into whichever area it's going to actually be sold, whether that's an online retailer or Pick n Pay, which is a major retailer in South Africa. And there is some export happening. So examples like, if you would call it export, examples like Pepkor, where they have PEP in other countries in Africa. They are manufacturing here and sending off into Africa, although it's not quite the export that we would like to use. We would like to go a lot more international, because once we are able to secure more international business, we will be able to actually have a lot more opportunities to grow local. Okay, and then some of the smaller SA CFTL, which would be what you're probably more familiar with. I think it was Marie that actually spoke about some of the designers that actually produce locally, and that's on a much smaller scale. Okay, next slide. So why would a retailer want to actually do local manufacturing? So number 1, it's all about market growth. This was spoken about before, and it's job creation. So very logically, if we can create more jobs, we are able to create a lot more disposable income. People with more disposable income will be able to spend more, and hence the economy grows. But that is actually a lot easier said than done. And if I had another 20 minutes, we could actually have a lot of conversation and debate around that topic. But it's sort of quite sound. The more money we can create in the market, the more people will be able to spend, the more jobs we can create. So that's almost like a continuous cycle. Then from a value chain, localization and transformation perspective, as I spoke about before, a lot of the retailers, if they are publicly listed, have to follow through with ESG strategies. They have to follow through with diversity strategies. So all of these large companies that are monitored because they are in the JSE have to follow very stringent ways of working, so that what they do really benefits the South African economy and its ethical business. So if they are required to do that, they can only partner up with other manufacturers or supply chain or support or stakeholders that are falling in line with the same type of ethical behavior. So in my experience, I often find that what the level of compliance or the level of product or the level of sustainability that we require is what consistently drives innovation and pushes suppliers to actually evolve. There's a hand up, Alexander. Okay.
Hi, yes. I don't know. You can answer at the end because I don't want to derail your presentation. But how do we approach industry? You said that working with local manufacturers is important. My question is, as a local manufacturer, what are the steps I can take to be able to get into a room to say, look, this is what I manufacture locally. How can we do a value share, or how can we leverage your advantages? What advantages of ours would you like to leverage? How do we get to that conversation?
Okay, so let me come back and answer that one at the end, right? I've written it down. Okay. So the other, I got to this point earlier. So if the local manufacturing system can find a way to export to other retailers across the world, that would be a massive unlock. It's very small at the moment, but that would really be an opportunity where it would transform the South African economy. From a competitive advancement perspective, we are able to offer fast response. So a lot of people think fast response is throwaway fashion. It's not necessarily that. We sell a lot of basic products such as 100% cotton tees and leggings. They're just, in our stores every single day. And if you are able to have the right amount of white or black or the right sizes, small versus XL, on the table, rather than just having a full size curve or a color range, you would be able to reduce waste. So fast response is not necessarily all about fast fashion. It's about staying in stock of the right things without carrying too much stock. We can also optimize what consumers want. So if you're testing new types of fashion, or you're testing some new type of category that you would like to actually offer to your consumer and you're not really sure how it would work, you want to eliminate risk, so you can do a test and you can get a read. And if you have a local manufacturer set up, you could actually turn around into large volumes. I mean, we're talking about thousands of units per order, but you can do that within 6 weeks. There's a lot of background planning to it, but if your system's set up, you would be able to respond to a customer, and within 6 weeks, the customer could have that item back in their wardrobe. You can also develop unique propositions. So, I love listening to other people on this call, and all of you I'm sure are studying to be designers or something in retail, but I work with things that actually get produced in thousands of volumes. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't have to have unique qualities. So my competitor set would be Jet or Mr. Price or Ackermans, and sometimes even people shopping from Woolies shop with us. We still have to have very, very unique designs and falling into a very specific proposition. Otherwise, people will choose someone else to shop with. So having a fast response means that you can actually learn and fail, or learn and win a lot more quickly, and you can try new things all the time. I spoke a little bit about this, but I think it ties into a few of the other speakers as well. Retailers do often lead the innovation. So we can afford to travel a lot a lot more overseas. We go to other factories in other countries, and a lot of the factories set up in, say, for example, Madagascar, Mauritius, Bangladesh, India, China. They might have. I think there's sometimes an understanding that their cost prices are actually better. And maybe in some cases they are, but that's not always necessarily the case. More of the reason why we don't have a larger local business is some of the products that we need to produce here can't be produced. But what they do have is efficiency, state-of-the-art factories, skills and labor that are on a general standard much better than South Africa. So what we tend to do is bring some of that information, that knowledge. We have to keep ourselves informed, and we can go back to our local manufacturers and say, see, this is what we've seen. These are the types of machinery that you should be looking at, you should be investing. So you'll find that there's a lot of pressure put on the retailer to drive movement and innovation within this particular value chain. Okay, next. Challenges we face, I tried to put it into 3 buckets. Some of this will be common knowledge and some will be quite interesting for you to hear about. But from an external factor, so if you're running a business and whether it's your own business or a corporate, you will find many factors that you cannot control, and you can lose a lot of energy around it, but you can't make a difference. So I think the art of doing business all the time, or even just doing life, is to work around what you can control and what you can't. So one of the things that we cannot control in business is the current world economic status post-COVID. We've all seen the rise of inflation across all the countries, across everywhere. The cost of food at the moment is really high, but the cost of resources has also actually gone up. And during COVID, we're seeing a little bit of this happening right now, but during COVID, we had, I can see you burning for the answer. I will come to it at the end. It doesn't quite flow with the presentation, but I will address it at the end. There has been a lot of movement with containers. Containers were transshipped. Containers were transshipped to countries where they weren't cleaning it up and making sure that it was COVID compliant. So there's a lot of things that happen in the world that don't make business go smoothly, and you just have to work around it. Somebody spoke about load shedding and energy crisis specific to South Africa, although over time, many countries in the world will have an energy crisis. We have got a skills and a job crisis within this country. And then if you add on strikes that happen, even if someone isn't striking, they can't leave their homes to get to work. So this all slows down manufacturing processes. And the last one, I'm sorry that it actually went over the block, is erratic weather patterns. So this is a very interesting one, which we've been monitoring over the last couple of years. Even though if it's summer and you're having a really cold week, people actually do not shop summer clothing. They either don't shop anything, or they want to shop winter. The people are spontaneous about what they're feeling and what's happening in the environment immediately, which now means that your supply chain needs to be a lot shorter so that you can flex in and out of product. But the only way to respond to that is to have a flexible supply chain, which is where local manufacturing comes in. From a retailer, the evolving customer, as an example, when we were all working from home, all of you were wearing sweatpants and you were wearing sleepwear. And then as soon as everyone was back out into the office or back out to socializing, nobody wanted to buy this anymore. So we saw a massive decline in sleepwear, swimwear, gymwear, and then a massive incline into high fashion products. So we have to be really quick to respond to that, but sometimes we can't work out when that moment is going to happen. It just happens and we've got the wrong product. Technological advances, so every industry is facing how fast do you adopt something? Do you pay millions of rands for something that would only get adopted 4 or 5 years from now? So it's not only seeing the advances, it's about deciding what to adopt now and when to adopt a specific type of technology. Sustainability, ESG demands. This is actually a prerequisite to doing business. It's also a really massive topic, and there are many retailers that are tackling this one bite at a time, and that includes Pick n Pay clothing. And then the current manufacturing system is fragmented. So I spoke about the limited resources of cotton, the limited resources of fabrics. There's also a lack of transparency. So we might work with a specific supplier that works with 16 factories, and they might get 10 million units to produce in 1 month. And then the one factory that is allotted the order might be full for this month, but they don't want to decline the order. They go and give it to another sub factory that's not even listed on our books. And this has happened, but it's impossible to actually control. And you could be the biggest company in the world. Even companies like H&M don't even have full transparency, but everyone is consistently working on that. It's not easy to know what hands is passing through that end-to-end process. From a manufacturing perspective, what the challenges they face is investment. Yes, the government does invest, but there isn't an unlimited amount of pool. They need financial aid to invest in new machinery, learn about new technology, adopt technology. They actually need investment in learning how to run their businesses successfully. There are so many SMEs or even medium-sized local manufacturers that actually are very good at manufacturing, but they don't know how to run a financially sound business. And what you'll find is if you're a manufacturer, the person that you get the trims from wants an immediate payment when they give you the trims or the fabric. So they need cash on delivery. So a lot of businesses go in and out of opening and closures because they really just don't have the skills to run a business. Lack of skills and diversity. So I do know of female-led factories or female-led local manufacturers. I don't know of many. That is still a trajectory that needs to be built up within South Africa, and maybe some of you on this call will take up that role. And then also just skills. So, you know, while you introduce new ways of manufacturing, new types of processes, they need to be upskilled to be able to do this process, and there's not that much investment going into that. You know, people are just trying to get an order, get it out, get paid, pay everyone, so that cycle just keeps continuing. And then there are such things as regional challenges. So a lot of the factories on the Indian coast are actually more cost effective because land and buildings in the Durban, KZN, Lesotho area is a lot cheaper versus Cape Town. Anyone living in Cape Town knows that renting or buying a house is far more expensive. That translates into land and buildings. Plus, the cost of skills are quite different. So at this moment, we do all of our manufacturing on the Indian coastline, and actually nothing really coming out of Cape Town, and you'll find more the middle price retailers manufacturing out of Cape Town because they can afford it. And it is very much lagging in technology and optimization. There is a lag in green practices. There is a lag in vertical integration. The good thing is we know what the gaps are, and we can actually work together to solve some of that over time. But it's not an instant solve. It's one step at a time. Okay, the next slide. So what's next? And again, I'm talking from a retail perspective. So I haven't shared a lot of stats with you, but I can share this stat. So when I first took over Pick n Pay, we had under 30% local, and right now, including SADC, we're around 54%, and that happened over a 3 to 4 year period. So you have to be determined to grow local. You can have all those challenges that I spoke about, but if you have an intention, and if you're determined to put your entire team to focus on it by researching who are the factories out there, what are the skills, what are the opportunities, how do we keep cross-costing the same item across all the different countries, and how do we unlock a way to do it in South Africa? And we've managed to do many of that. It is possible. You have to take your team on the journey. You can't be the only person believing in local. And fortunately for us, we call this a purpose journey. We believe that part of our existence at Pick n Pay Clothing is to create more jobs in South Africa, and doing it this way is to growing local. And then you have to take your suppliers and your manufacturers on that journey, which means you're going to pick meaningful relationships, you're going to consistently communicate, have feedback, visit them in factories, be open to sharing information all the time. And then talk ends up to be cheap. So you have to have plans, right? So we have a plan that we would like to take Pick n Pay Clothing to 60% local. 100% is too risky. We are in a country that is quite volatile, like when KZN, I just told you that all our production happens on the Eastern Coast. So when KZN had both the riots or the floods, we had nothing coming out of that area. So we have to also think strategically as to how to mitigate risk, but we would like to take Pick n Pay Clothing to 60% local. So we want to continue with our critical parts. We want to set goals and make sure that we're measuring innovation and our targets, and we keep testing small. If you fail fast, move on, but keep trying out new things, because you might try 10 new things and one thing can become quite a big thing, and you can start to include that in your local manufacturing. And then lastly, keep local sustainable. So the word sustainable has two meanings. To some people, it's green, and that's correct. It also means having a business and running a business that exists forever, right? We've seen many big companies fall down and disappear. So it's important to be sustainable, because all the jobs that you actually created, you want to hold and you want to grow. So building efficiency models, having fast response to react to customers quickly so that you reduce waste, improving compliance measures and processes is just good for everyone and protects all the workers and everyone and your stakeholders. And the most important thing, taking your eye off the customer will be the demise of any business. So always putting your customer first, understanding how they're evolving, and making sure that everyone in your value chain is understanding this feedback and responding to it. Okay, my last slide. And so in a nutshell, local manufacturing plays an important part of growing the South African economy. You all know that. We're working together, innovating, transforming how we think and operate can unlock more opportunities. Local manufacturing can offer a good solution to improving the lives of many South Africans and businesses. We need to be focused and relentless to make it a cornerstone of growth and opportunity in South Africa. And we also need to go big and put plans together to export. And I think that's it. And now I'm going to answer your question, right? So if you can take the presentation down. If you think of, this is just advice to anybody, right? If you want to go pitch to someone about what you're doing and what your product is about, the first advice I would give you is to first understand the person or the business that you're trying to pitch to. So if you're coming to Pick n Pay Clothing, go into the store, try to understand what the product proposition is about, and make sure whatever you're going to present tailor makes itself towards lending it to that product proposition. I get in a week maybe 5 to 8 new suppliers contacting me every week. Obviously, I've got a team of people that filter through that, but often most people haven't gone into stores, they haven't seen the product that we sell. And the best presentation that I have still to receive is if someone bought 10 items from my store, then went and costed it and actually produced it in their factory and came back and said, I can do this for you, and this is the cost, and it looks like it's better quality or it's a better cost. You have to do things that would actually make your story a showstopper. I think people don't put enough information and don't put enough research into who their audience is, and whatever they're doing just generally gets lost. So from a 3D perspective, Alexander, I mean, I really did enjoy your presentation. It's very insightful. I'm quite familiar with 3D, and there are many retailers using it in actually different aspects, particularly on the QA perspective. I think the first thing would be to research who your competitor set is, who else is doing that, and then firstly listing how you could make the life of a retailer much cheaper, more efficient, cost saving, and how you could add value. And if you look, my email is common knowledge. You customers that mail me, when you on my level, you have to be open to anyone mailing you. But what would stop me is if someone put something aligned to Pick and Pay clothing and showed the benefits, I would be able to read that, and I must be interested into wanting to contact you. I usually just get a body of email. This is who I am. This is what I do. It's generally not enough, and so I decline it. I hope that answers your question. I know there was other comments, and I'm happy to field more questions.
Yes, thank you so much, Hazel. It was such an insightful presentation. I'm definitely one of your hybrid consumers that has a cupboard full of Pick and Pay clothing, but also on the odd occasion goes to Woolies. So I had a little chuckle when you mentioned that, because it is quite an interesting customer. But yes, thank you so much. Just in terms of time, I'm just quickly going to summarize a little bit. I was just writing whilst you were chatting. Just firstly, thank you so much for also bringing up the master plan. I think it's such an important thing that we need to look at when looking at local manufacturing and resources. And then also the 2 cotton mills and 6 fabric mills is so interesting, because I teach sustainability in the fashion industry, and we never actually know, there's no research that's really accessible to say this is the issue. So it was very interesting to be like, okay, that's, it already starts with the raw material stage. So thank you so much for that. That was really insightful. And I obviously, as a supply chain person, I really like a diagram. So I really, really enjoyed that as well. Just my one question before we're going to move to questions for industry for about 20 minutes. And then right at the end, we'll handle all more questions from the audience. So the audience, just whilst we are chatting a bit more to industry for about 20 minutes, you're welcome to post some questions or just write some questions down, and we'll take them at the end. Then just from me, you said one of the major challenges is vertical integration. How do we combat that as retailers?
So you mentioned TFG as what with their factory down in Cape Town. So many retailers have actually bought factories where they are so the actual retailer is vertically integrated, right? So that's an opportunity. There are challenges to that, because you have to keep the factory profitable and your business profitable. So it's developing a model that makes sense. But when I mean vertical integration, I'm talking more from a local system. So because there's such a limited amount of cotton sources and fabric mills, and we're importing the majority of fabrics, and we're importing close to all our trims, that means the local South African local manufacturing system is not vertically integrated.
Yes.
It's still bringing product from abroad. And how do we solve that? We need to find more investment into this industry. So I mean, I didn't go all the way back, but before China was producing and sending product across the world, we had an incredible local manufacturing setup. This would be like in the 60s, 70s, yes, up to the 80s. But then China came along, and it actually crashed the local industry. So there's a lot of fear, do what we spend hundreds of millions into getting another fabric mill, and then there's all these complexities that at the moment they're not necessarily unique to South Africa, but a lot more enhanced when it comes to power supply, when it comes to skills and labor. So it's not that there isn't people that don't have the money to do it. I think they just risk assess. But at some point, we need to address that, and I think it's really all about investment.
Yeah, it's about that balancing act. I think, like you say, it's about that risk assessment, but it is also what industry and consumers are we are looking for it, and I think it is starting to come back, but we do have a lot of barriers. So thank you so much for that. It's very insightful. I'm going to start with the questions for industry, and we're going to keep it short just because, Hazel, I think you've touched especially on question 1 and 2 already. So I don't know, I'll start with you first, Hazel, if you just want to add anything to the first question, but you've dived in so much into these barriers. Otherwise, I'll just hand over to Alexander to give his input. But I don't know if you have just a last thought on the barrier.
So I'm just going to address number 2, right? So let's just say everything stayed the same. All the factories we have were the same. All the mills were the same, and we just wanted to approach as how we could sweat the assets within the local manufacturing segment. There's one opportunity. It has been researched. So basically, other third world countries that are key at manufacturing, such as Cuba or South American factories or South American manufacturing. And what came up was they are far more efficient. So they actually manufacture across 7 days. They manufacture over Christmas. So their productivity is much higher and the costs are lower, and they can pay their laborers more. In South Africa, manufacturing is technically Monday to Friday with a bit of overtime on Saturday, and over December manufacturing completely shuts down. And then the second part of it is over the winter months here, it reaches a valley, so they don't have enough products that they can actually produce within that time frame. So if we could unlock how to use the exact same assets more, we would be able to increase and grow the local manufacturing system.
Excellent.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks so much, Hazel. I think definitely just it's very interesting to see our efficiency is just not on par with the rest of the world, and seeing how we can improve that. Alexander, I'm going to hand over to you also just to address question 1 and 2 together, and then we'll pop to question 3 for both of you.
All right. So for question 1, what is the single most significant barrier? I don't think there's one. I think that there are 2 barriers very closely connected, and that is technology, and that is skilled workers to work those technologies. I think to accelerate local clothing and textile manufacturing in South Africa, we shouldn't just look into what already exists, so the retail space. I think we should look into either creating new markets or capturing new markets. So, for example, your very high-end customized clothing, there's no country that has a factory who is doing that. There's no country who has a supply chain or an ecosystem who is doing that. That's a new field that we could move into and very quickly service on a global level. So that is my idea for an opportunity for local manufacturing. You mentioned just the first and the second question, hey?
Yes, I'll dive into the third question now. I think it's so nice that you are also saying let's look at actually exporting and going global. And I think especially with your in your 3D printing space, that's definitely something we need to look at. My studies also focus on developing countries, technology in developing countries, and it's saying why can't we compete with developed countries? And that ties in so nice with what Hazel was also saying. So I'm going to then just pop to question 3, because I think we have spoken quite a lot about question 1 and 2 already tonight. And Alexander, I'll start with you. And I'll open it to not just saying automation, but technology. What role do you believe will technology and sustainability play in local manufacturing and the resources sector in the future?
I think it will play a critical role. I think because as a country, we are way further behind the other either third world or developing countries who already have big manufacturing industries. Like Hazel said, it's just the time for us to build those industries is already gone. All we can do now is leverage 4IR, leverage the convergence of new technologies or convergence of technologies and the new uses we found for them to kind of skip a lot of the development. So it doesn't make sense for us, for the government to say, okay, we are going to build 15 textile factories, right? That doesn't make sense now, because by the time we catch up to where the rest of the world is, they would have spent their time getting ahead. So now I think it's critical, because we need to use that to skip the divide and all of the time we've missed out developing ecosystems, not just for your small customized runway projects, but also for your retail. I think that not just with 3D printing is it's a good complementary technology. It's never going to replace any of the existing forms, but what it is going to do is it's going to enhance and augment what is capable with what already exists. And that's why it's critical for us to adopt now, so that we can start building the new ecosystems, because we can't keep waiting for global industry to develop, and then we buy the tech or we outsource that manufacturing, because it just sticks us where we are now, just with different manufacturing ecosystems.
Yeah, thank you so much for that, Alex, and I definitely agree with that. And you raised a very interesting point that I will just end off with you, just in terms of the industry questions. I have a student doing her honors in 3D printing and the potentials for custom clothing, also looking a bit with, can it be sustainable? And you mentioned something very interesting now and saying it's going to be an add-on, it won't fully replace fashion. Yeah. What do you think, where are we going with 3D printing and fashion? Where do you see it in 5 years? Because it is still quite expensive and time consuming, as far as I'm aware. Yeah. So kind of my question is, where do we see 3D printing and fashion in the next 5-10 years?
In the next 5 to 10 years, it's going to depend on the buy-in from education institutions for upskilling. Us at Amnova, we don't want to be fashion designers. We don't want to be a fashion 3D printing company. We just happen to be able to build the tech for it and develop the production processes for it. For example, when we did a workshop at Stadio, and I took the learners through this, how you quickly create a 3D model. They made like very simple, easy to make accessories. And then we made the accessories to show them this is like the production process. And I think that in the next 5 years, it's going to be an expansion of that. I think it's going to start with your high-end fashion, your customized products, because again, cost. But I think the cost of 3D printing, for example, has dropped massively in the past couple of years, and it's going to continue dropping. And I think in 5 years' time, if there's buy-in from upskilling institutions of all kinds, that the technology is going to get there. Other countries are also developing it. Being able to use it and being able to make clothing and prototypes and small batch productions. By small, I mean anything under 10,000. After that, that goes straight into the retail space. Making anything lower than that is going to become very cheap, and it's going to happen very quickly. And I think the rate at which younger people are adopting technologies, I mean, for our workshop, and they could make an accessory is crazy. Better designed accessories than I could come up with is crazy. So I think that the possibilities are genuinely, I don't want to use the word scary, it feels like a very strong word, but the possibilities are very likely, if not definitely, because of the way that we are moving into the digital space. And B, I think it's going to empower, because, and this can be a completely separate conversation, South Africa is very well positioned in the fashion space to leapfrog a lot of other companies, definitely countries, definitely the continent. And I think it's really just about buy-in. All of the ingredients are there. It's just about people actually being willing to come to the table and being willing to cook.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much for that. I think it also drives us to invest as an institution and with a lot of young students in the audience as well. So thank you so much for that, Alexander. I'm then going to end off just with Hazel with the last question. What role do you think automation and technology and sustainability will play in our local manufacturing, coming more from the retail and from the Pick n Pay space?
So sustainability is actually a must, right? It's actually, it is a core work run. it really isn't easy to transform your business, which looks like A, into B overnight. But working with universities, people that research technologies, etc., there are certainly ways that you can incorporate sustainable practices and have a deadline and eventually get there. I believe that the technological part of the technological advancement is going to support how we get to sustainable practices faster. So, you know, you can talk about biodegradable products, but if you just bought what you need to sell first, that would be eliminating a lot of the waste. And if we could forecast better, if we could actually use all the trends and patterns through AI to understand what the customer is doing down to the T, get a lot more individual in how we are working with our customer, and you need AI to do that, you will be able to reduce the number of assets that you need, and you will eliminate waste and put a lot less waste back into the earth. So they are actually hand in hand. I don't think we can tackle the sustainable issue in the way we're operating right now. We are going to need technology. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Hazel. I 100% agree, and I think that's definitely why we also put the two questions together. I'm just going to end off, and then if there's people from the audience, they can start raising their hands or posting questions in the chat. I know there is one that that Stefan will go back to. I'll hand over to him now. Just out of my curiosity, my last question just to you, Hazel, is which technologies do you think will play this role? I know you spoke about a bit about AI, but what are you envisioning for the next 5 years will play a big role?
Yeah, so data is so at the moment, you know, there's such a lot of data out there. We know about the PAPIA Act, which protects people, but there's so much customer movement actually happening, right? So having AI to filter through that data and then using humans to actually work out exactly which trends and patterns you want to follow. You don't want to follow everything. There's just too much data and there's too much movement. And if I was looking at it from a manufacturing perspective, there is shortages of skills and labor. And if we want to use the word leapfrog, we can certainly use technology to aid how manufacturing happens within the country and increase efficiency on a total other level. And again, even there, you'll find that there are antiquated ways of how manufacturers forecast how much of fabric they want. There's still a lot of fabric waste that happens in a 20,000 unit production line. So using technology, they can work out exactly how to cut a certain item, how to you have as little waste as possible. Technology can be used to chemically break down used product to reinvent it into another type of product. So that's upcycling. There's just so much, but it does require the combination of human intervention and technology to find the solutions that we're trying to break the ground on.
Yes, thank you so much, Hazel. It's really, really insightful. Maria, I know you were also busy in the chat. I don't know if you quickly want to jump in before Stefan concludes the evening for us, but thank you so much from my side to Hazel and Alexander.
Thanks, Sandri. I think I'll hand over to Stefan. I'm not too sure where he wants to start, and then if I can contribute, I'll jump back in.
I have two questions, but first I have a comment. One of my favorite shirts is actually a Pick n Pay clothing shirt. Thank you very much, Hazel, for the work you do.
Thank you very much.
And it says, I am made from recycled fabric.
That's it. That's it. That's the sustainable part.
That's a testament to you saying the journey, the purposeful journey that you're trying to walk with your customers. So we have a question from Marty, and I think you've touched on this, but I'll just read it out. It says, how do you as a large retailer adopt to external factors such as load shedding, as well as how are you including technological advancements into your supply chain? So I think you've covered the advancements in your supply chain, looking at how you can be more efficient. But in terms of load shedding, is that somehow, what is your approach to that specific external factor?
So I think it was, I mean, we've had load shedding at different stages and years, etc. But last year around September, that's when it went to like stage 6s, and it really stopped consumers in their tracks, because they were, they weren't sure what to do when they walk into malls and all the stores are dark, etc. But what we immediately just put in battery packs into our stores. So basically, we put in 2 to 3 battery packs that actually support the minimal running of a store. It's not as bright as it usually is when we are full on electricity, but customers can shop, and it's amazing 1 year later how people just adapt to their new environment. So we haven't really. 1 year later, we've seen that load shedding doesn't play as much of a hindrance to retail sales as it did a year before. Most retailers have put in other energy options. Obviously, we don't want to do anything with diesel, but the battery packs are eco-friendly and do serve the purpose.
And in terms of the interruptions from your suppliers, did you pick up a great disruption in that space?
Yes. So as I said, we would actually drive the innovation, or really sit with them and go, how do we actually mitigate the delay in production? Many of them have found any energy sources, and some of them just simple things. They just reorganize how they work. So if they know how the schedules are working, they reorganize their workers on different schedules, they reorganize them on Saturdays, etc. So people, it's amazing when you're faced with a challenge, you always can come up with some solutions. I'm not saying that it's perfect, but it's no such thing as business completely halts.
Absolutely. Then I've got a question from Elizabeth, and I think that will lead us out of the conversation. How important is it to start educating our buyers of the future to work towards sustainability in the buying and merchandising practice?
Okay, it's critical. So you'll find a lot of leaders or businesses, or industries, it may not even be clothing, that sometimes look at sustainable practices as something that you need to get to. But that's not true. You have to find a way that it is part of your nucleus and what you're doing every day. But you can't be the only one driving this agenda. As you build culture, as you build strategy, sustainability has to be a part of that strategy, and everyone that's working in your value chain. So for us, we have sustainable workshops with all of our logistic partners, with people that manufacture. Someone who does my lighting has to have sustainable certificates. So it goes through the entire pipeline. Otherwise, it doesn't help if you're only doing it in one segment, or you're the only person that actually believes in that strategy. If you want to move forward, you have to move forward together. It's the same as building local. You have to do it sustainably. Don't go build local and then have to undo everything and then make it sustainable after that. So it's a critical component. I'm sure you're teaching it, but if if it's just a small part of the course, I would say it should become a lot larger.
Absolutely, yes. So we do, obviously, I think as a fashion school, we have adopted as a framework, as a principled stance on sustainability in terms of teaching upcycling, recycling methods, and also really making it a almost a philosophy in all our programs and modules. So we've ran over time. I'm not going to take any more questions. I'm just going to say thank you so much to our two guest speakers, Hazel and Alexander. You have really added so much value, and I really want to thank you for sacrificing some of your time to come and speak to us. It's really appreciated, and I want to say that Starting School of Fashion and our community, we really thank you, and we welcome you to our doors. Hopefully we'll do some collabs in the future, which we're obviously always open to doing. But I also want to thank Marie and Sunri for being moderators for the session. It's been truly amazing hearing the insights, and we'll also be sharing the insights with our fashion community and the broader community. To everybody who signed in tonight, thank you so much. We wish you a lovely evening further and all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Stefan. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.